Alfa Romeo entering IndyCar racing? It's more likely than you would think. Let's talk some facts. Number one, IndyCar and its current engine manufacturers, Honda and Chevrolet, have reached an agreement to introduce brand new engine regulations starting in either 2020 or 2021, depending on when IndyCar decides to implement those regulation changes. Now, while the agreement has been reached, the announcement isn't likely to come until the month of May. Of course, that makes sense in a lot of ways because, of course, the international and national media attention is no hotter for IndyCar racing than it is in the month of May for the Indianapolis 500. But it does seem a bit counterintuitive to announce new regulations when you're the only people participating in these new regulations are the people who are already building engines. Enter Alfa Romeo. If you may have been watching the St. Petersburg IndyCar broadcast, at least here in the United States, you will have noticed a conspicuous amount of Alfa Romeo ads during the race. And I was actually sent something by Christian Gomez on Twitter that really started to pique my interest because he actually went through and counted the amount of advertisement by Alfa Romeo and then also by the current engine suppliers for IndyCar, Chevrolet and Honda. And the numbers were fairly surprising. Honda only advertised twice during the commercial breaks in IndyCar. 4 times for Chevrolet. And matching that with 4 advertisements shown was Alfa Romeo. Now, what you may or may not know already is that IndyCar actually contractually obligates a certain amount of promotion from their engine partners. So it's possible that both Chevrolet and Honda were contractually obligated to spend a little bit of money on the TV. Now, whether that was advertisements or not is fairly unclear, but what we do know is the fact that at the moment, Alfa Romeo has no contractual obligation to IndyCar to advertise on their product, meaning they're there because they see value in it and nothing more. Makes you think that they may be taking a harder look at being involved in IndyCar racing in a larger degree. The other big key to all of this is the fact that there is a big TV deal coming. I know a lot of people will talk, oh, well, the interest in manufacturers is coming from the Universal Aero Kit. And while, yes, that decreases the cost of entry, ultimately, you're seeing all this intrigue in IndyCar, all this renewed interest from teams, sponsors, manufacturers, because of that new TV deal. IndyCar has been saddled with one of the worst TV deals in recent memory. We're talking now, there are 2 rumored offers on the table right now between NBC and ABC. NBC is offering 8 races on broadcast network TV, while ABC and ESPN are offering 10, meaning out of 16 races on NBC, would IndyCar decide to go with that, half of their races would be broadcast on the big NBC, and if they go with ESPN, well over half, 10 out of 16 races would be broadcast on ABC. And that is huge for exposure. IndyCar TV ratings have already been going up, not only on the NBC Sports Network, but we saw a rise for the ABC broadcast of St. Petersburg. And while I will agree many people, including myself, think the TV ratings are fairly outdated, the corporate suits sitting at Alfa Romeo and Chevrolet and Honda, and of course the people who sponsor the race cars, they don't see it that way. They still look at TV numbers. They don't necessarily look at internet numbers. So this TV deal has really sparked a lot of interest and a lot of momentum towards IndyCar that it hasn't had in a long time because it simply hasn't had the TV deal to handle it. Another fairly interesting fact about this whole situation is the fact that there is an Italian team that will be entering a car in this year's Indianapolis 500. Scuderia Corsa, who is the entrant for the 3rd Rahal Letterman Lanigan car with Oriol Servia. Now, they race Ferraris in the IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship, and while they aren't a fully factory Ferrari team, there is certainly some money from Maranello going into that team. team. And of course, Ferrari is also associated with Fiat Chrysler, which owns Alfa Romeo. Now, what's interesting about mentioning that, not only an Italian team dipping their toes in the water here stateside, but there's a little bit of unrest on the Formula One side, namely involving the Fiat empire and Ferrari and Alfa Romeo. Now, Fiat has money, of course, in Ferrari. It's kind of unclear whether they're the same company or separate at this point, but for the purposes of this video, let's consider Ferrari and Alfa Romeo the same thing, or at least under the same banner. There's a lot of talks that Ferrari may want to break out of F1, possibly start their own breakaway series, or even go to IndyCar. Now, a lot of these times, actually virtually every single time Ferrari has said this, they have managed to bend F1 to their will. And once again, I suspect this will be the case. But what's more important is the fact that they are also bankrolling a team at Sauber with Alfa Romeo branding. And Alfa Romeo just recently returned to the United States within the last 4 or 5 years as a major car company. But of course, with only one Grand Prix held in the United States, and certainly the exposure of F1 is significantly less in the United States than it is for IndyCar racing, you've got to think that Fiat is looking to expand that brand one way or the other, and Alfa Romeo entering IndyCar may be the key to that. Now, of course, Alfa Romeo has been in IndyCar before. Unfortunately, it was a fairly failure-driven program in the late 80s and early 90s with the Patrick Racing team. Drivers like Al Unser Sr., Roberto Guerrero, Danny Sullivan drove for that team with Miller sponsorship. They never got a win, and they left the sport at the end of 1991. Now, that was an awfully long time ago, and several iterations of Alfa Romeo ago. So they haven't, this is not a new thing. Alfa Romeo, unlike Ferrari, has actually gotten to IndyCar racing. But also on the subject of TV commercials, we have seen this before, namely 2008. During the later part of the 2008 season, when there was yet another potential new TV deal on the line, in addition to the merger of Champ Car and IndyCar, Volkswagen took a very, very hard look at entering IndyCar racing for what was then the 2010 regulations that were going to come out. And they, like Alfa Romeo is doing now, started buying a lot of advertisements on races. But unfortunately, a combination of the economic crash, which hit Volkswagen very hard and also hampered a lot of their racing programs, particularly in the United States, if you look at the American Le Mans Series, with the exit of Audi and Porsche, along with the terrible TV deal that was signed with Versus for 10 years, which we are now just about to get out of in IndyCar racing. That killed off the VW thing. I don't think we're going to see that same mistake made this time. If the TV deal is good, and this may already be happening behind the scenes, we do know that Cosworth, which currently does not have an IndyCar program that they are building engines for, has expressed serious interest in coming back into the sport. Unfortunately, you're not allowed to enter an engine that does not have a manufacturer badge in IndyCar racing. So Cosworth would need a partner to go into IndyCar racing with. Again, Alfa Romeo. If this all comes together, I suspect it'll be an Alfa Romeo Cosworth. Now, the question, of course, is what are these regulations going to entail? And honestly, nobody really knows. There's some talk of 4-cylinder engines. There's some talk that they'll bring back turbocharged V8. They might go with higher powered single turbocharged as opposed to the twin turbocharged formula they are using now. But the goal, I do know about the current the new regulations, is that there is supposed to be 150 to 200 horsepower increase. So higher horsepower, meaning slidier cars, and definitely faster and more exciting racing. So Alfa Romeo entering IndyCar. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. Let me know your thoughts on the new regulations that are potentially coming out for IndyCar. What do you make of all this? Is Fiat and Ferrari and Alfa Romeo, are they all blowing smoke up everybody's butts? It's certainly possible. So thank you guys so much for watching. This has been David Land on YouTube. Subscribe for more IndyCar and motorsports content, and we'll see you in the next video.